This is the Pennyworth podcast on TV Podcast Industries. We're back talking about Pennyworth Season 2, Episode 5, The Bleeding Heart.
The main event is scheduled for 5 4-minute rounds with a minute's break between each round. We're going to use that 25-minute window to get in and out while every eye is on the ring. Because when the fight is over, every one of these exit routes will be jammed with people. Questions?
Aye.
Yeah.
What if the fight ends early?
The main event always goes to the final round.
They want to sell all the beer and the pies. Can't have punters leaving early.
Aye, but what if there's a knockout or a submission or something?
The fight's a stage, Daveboy.
What you mean, like, fixed? No, they're not.
Are you soft?
Everyone knows they're fixed.
That was something of a bent, maybe, I get that, yeah. It's human nature to cheat, but all of them.
Yes, mate.
Welcome back, governors. We're back with Pennyworth on TV Podcast Industries. We're talking about Season 2, Episode 5, The Bleeding Heart. Oh, Pennyworth's finally back for the second half of its second season. I'm Devilish Derek, one of your hosts of the Pennyworth Podcast on TV Podcast Industries.
Welcome back, fellow governors. Yes, I am one of your other hosts, Mad Johnny Murphy, to take one of the names of the wrestlers from this show, or in the British tradition of wrestling, I am Giant Pancake Stacks.
Yes, early wrestling from the 80s when we started watching wrestling with Giant Haystacks. There.
Or Big Mommy.
Might be Big Mommy, maybe.
Maybe
not.
That was always an interesting Saturday afternoon on ITV. Yes, the channel that had British wrestling. Yes, a far cry from WWE and WWF. I soon moved on to Ric Flair and Macho Man Randy Savage. Yes, let's just say they were a lot more showbiz.
A little bit higher production values in the US, but very close to what we see here in Pennyworth, though, right? That's it seemed like a very similar type of wrestling bout that we saw, a bit more violent, actually, in Pennyworth. Can you believe wrestling's fixed, John?
Oh my goodness, that was the big revelation of this episode of Pennyworth.
Poor Daveboy looked like they'd stolen all his toys. Yeah. He was absolutely destroyed by this idea that this actual sport could be fixed. You know?
I know, although, in fairness, those two ladies in the wrestling ring certainly came armed with axe and rolling pin to boot. They were taking no prisoners.
As you can tell, we are delighted to be back with our Pennyworth podcast and with Pennyworth on Epix, returning this time. One thing that's changed since the last time we were talking about Pennyworth is that it is now airing in the UK. It is now airing on Stars Play. They're a couple of weeks behind on their release of the episodes, but it is airing week to week, which is really cool. Having our wonderful fellow listeners over this side of the globe able to watch Pennyworth.
Yeah, absolutely. Welcome on board, fellow governors. Welcome back to the Pennyworth podcast on TV Podcast Industries. It's good to be back, actually. I think there's 5-6 episodes left remaining. We're not too sure whether there's 9 or 10 episodes in this season.
Yeah, it was an odd one. When the original press release came out, there were 10 episodes confirmed for the season, and then it changed to 8 because of the COVID restrictions. They reduced it down to 8, and I think it went back up to 9, but over on IMDb, it's still showing as 10 episodes. So we'll see how it plays out over the next couple of episodes, see how many episodes there are in the season. But whatever they give us for this season, I'm really intrigued to see what they what's there.
Yeah, definitely. Can't wait to see how they finish off this second half of the season of Pennyworth.
But we haven't been resting on our laurels since the last episode of Pennyworth aired in 2020. We have been covering lots and lots more stuff stuff, particularly WandaVision, which we just finished this week, and a really excellent show over on Disney+. Marvel show, obviously, connected with comic books as well, just like Pennyworth is. We will be going on to Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which starts airing from the 19th of March. So if you want to keep up to date with all the things that we cover, make sure you subscribe to the main podcast over on TV Podcast Industries. You can find us on any good or evil podcast catcher to subscribe to TV Podcast Industries. You get access to all of our regular podcasts. We're up to, this is episode 556 of TV Podcast Industries, so lots and lots of episodes that we have for many, many shows, including Gotham and Pennyworth. So hopefully you'll join us over there.
Yes, and with all those podcasts, there is a great community that comes along with the podcast, and we really love to get your thoughts, comments, or feedback on anything to do with any of the series that we cover. But in particular for Pennyworth, please, for the Royal Mail section of feedback for Pennyworth, you can send in your thoughts to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com, and we will hope to discuss them in a future episode.
Yep, no feedback this episode because we're recording a little bit in advance of the air date of the show, but we hope to hear your thoughts about the episodes as they go on.
Yeah, let's get on with our spoiler-filled review. Mm-hmm. So, Derek, what are some of the episode details for episode 5, The Bleeding Heart?
Well, the episode was written by Hannah Boschi. She's been a script editor on season 1 of Pennyworth and has become an executive story editor in this season. This is the first writing credit that she has for the show.
Great stuff. Yeah. Love seeing that where people come up through the production or the writer's room or whatever it may be to get more deeply involved in the show.
Absolutely.
It's almost a bit like with Ben McKenzie as the actor who then went on and directed some of the episodes of Gotham.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, really cool. And Hannah has some fascinating credits over on her IMDb. She's been involved in many, many movies and TV shows that have been in the UK, but moved into the ranks in script writing, which is really cool that she's gotten this episode. The episode was directed by John East. We've spoken about John East many times in the past. He directed episodes of shows like Lost in Space on Netflix, and we discussed him last season when he directed Pennyworth, season 1, episode 8, Sandy Shaw. He'll also be back for another episode later on this season. That episode, Sandy Shaw, was where they had the big team up between Alfie and his boys and the Sykes sisters back in season 1. It was a really fun episode that John East directed.
Yeah, it was great fun, that episode, with the team up between the boys and the Sykes sisters. Yeah. So great stuff. Great to have John East back on board for this episode.
Definitely put his stamp on a particular scene in this episode that we'll talk about later on. But John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with your synopsis for Pennyworth season 2, episode 5, The Bleeding Heart?
Sure. As Alfie and Daveboy scramble to get the money together for their move to America, they have no other option but to run one last job for Gully. As they make their move on the local wrestling arena, the plan goes badly wrong when civilians are shot and killed by Banjo, one of the members of Gully's crew. With news of the botched job circulating in the press, Alfred's mum suspects his involvement and asks him to move out of the house. His father would be very disappointed in him. Alfie's love life is just as complicated, as Gully's wife Melanie reconnects with him in the Delaney club, and once again Alfie shuns Sandra's affections. Elsewhere, the closeness between Bet and Katie develops, as they must think of creative ways to hide one of Bet's former imprisoners, George the Beefeater, at the sex shop, Sykes Pain Supplies, and Katie learns more about Bet's past. Meanwhile, tensions ratchet up at Raven Union headquarters between Harwood, increasingly dependent on medication and booze, and Francis Gaunt, as he learns of her secret meeting with the English League and loses trust in his old friend.
Lots to talk about in this return episode, this mid-season premiere, as we usually call it. This wasn't the original intention. I think they did originally intend to have all 10 episodes air back-to-back, so this would have been just a 1-week gap from last week. But lots going on, I suppose, in this episode. We're going to break it down the way we normally do into our section about Alfie and the boys and the job this time, the English League and Thomas, and Raven Union and the Sykes sisters. That's the way we're going to break it down this time. I think that might work. John, what do you think?
Sounds good to me.
Excellent.
Let's kick on.
Yeah, let's get into Alfie and the boys and the job. Kind of kicks off, I suppose, with Alfie reiterating that he's kind of in a bit of a spot here. He's trying to get out of the UK. This has been his whole primary reason for the first half of the season, is to get out of England, get himself over to America. We all know he's going to end off in Gotham. This is the one thing we know about Alfie's character. I did like that he goes to Thomas Wayne to get those tickets to Gotham. I don't know why, but it just feels really good when you have these characters from the DC Comics universe, or the DC universe, let's say. Never been in comics for a lot of the characters, but actually talking about Gotham like it's a New York City, like it's a really important city in the US. You know, he wants flights out to Gotham specifically. So kind of showing how important the city is in a way. Yeah,
I mean, it's just that name drop is really cool to get Gotham mentioned in this episode. I like that it's Alfred trying to sort of get some kind of foot in the door, almost like some discount or some favor from Thomas to get to America. You know, he thinks it's only going to be $2,500 to get the flights over, and it ends up being $5,000 at least. So
per person,
per person, per ticket. So, you know, there's a great little moment with Thomas Wayne and Alfred. You know, you can imagine them being together in Wayne Manor back in Gotham, even though, you know, the comics very rarely sort of focus on that. You know, it is about Bruce and Alfred.
Yeah.
So I like these interactions with these characters that I guess, you know, in the comics further in the future don't really have that interaction in the same way as with Bruce.
Yeah, I really do love that it kind of sets a completely different tone of what we think the relationship between Thomas and Alfred was. I think we always thought that, you know, they were really good friends. Alfred was the butler of the household. He's taking care of Bruce Wayne, the son of Thomas, because he's indebted to the Wayne family or indebted to his good friend, effectively. What we see here is that, you know, even Thomas calls it out, you know, we are friends, and Alfie's kind of looking at him going, kind of, you know, but Thomas offers to pay for the tickets for him, which I love that they underlined this here. Thomas is trying to pay for the tickets for him, and later on you hear Thomas speaking into his dictaphone, effectively saying this was going to be a way to try and get Alfie on board. They've been trying to recruit him for the CIA for a long time now. So Thomas is totally duplicitous in this show, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah. I like the way, though, that Alfred is very clued in that any favor with the CIA is going to come and bite him back on the ass.
Exactly. Just a call out on the amount of money that it costs to go over there. So they call it costs $15,000 for all three tickets that they're looking for. That's one for Alfie, one for Daveboy, and one for his mum. That's the three tickets. Last season, Baza, unfortunately, who's died back in episode 3. Baza would have been the fourth ticket, which would have equaled $20,000. Which was the exact amount of money that got robbed from them back in episode 3. So they would have had enough money to cover all 4 seats for the flight. Unfortunately now, because
that's all they would have had. They wouldn't have been able to have the life that they kept dreaming about, because it would have all gone on the flight over.
Exactly. Haven't we had holidays like that before, John?
Absolutely.
Aye. But, this also leads to the job. This leads to the decision that they have to go back and do one last job for Gully, right? Because they need the money. They're now way behind on what they need to get out of the UK and get over to America. I love that they've put their own restriction on the timeline, though. Like, Alfie's the one that said they need to get out next week, so they've just given themselves, 6 days to get $20,000. So, you know, they absolutely made that decision. Thomas was kind of saying, flights are like gold dust here, and Alfie's going, it has to be next week, you know? So they have kind of made it a little more difficult for themselves.
Yeah, they really have. And I guess they need way more than 20,000, because, okay, later on in this episode, Alfie's mum, who, you know, we assume is still coming, but she's been pretty ice cold on going. Yeah. And I think she really confirms later on that she ain't going to be going to America. Absolutely. So they would have 10,000 to spend, but whether that would set them up in the life that they think they're going to get in America, I'm not entirely sure. So my kind of feeling is that they would need to get a lot more than 20,000 to live the dream that they've had in their minds, which is about effectively socializing their way to the ends of their life, basically, by the pool in Hollywood. So, they kind of need to rethink that amount of money.
Yeah, they also want to get out of a war zone, so I'm sure, maybe they don't get the best life for the world, but they get out of the UK, so I think that's it. But the job itself is kind of interesting, isn't it? The job itself is to steal from the local wrestling arena. Now, this does seem like a big arena, it does seem like a massive event that's going on, so there will definitely be money there, but it's an interesting one. It's not a bank. It's not, another regular location for storing money, so it's an interesting job, at least.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the great thing that this does is just set up the interaction with Gully and also with his wife, Melanie. Because you've had a bit of tension there between Gully and Alfie. Yep. You've certainly had tension between Daveboy and members of Gully's team. And certainly Gully may or may not be aware of what went down in the Delaney club previously between Alfie and his wife. So,
I'd say he's pretty unaware of that now.
This is kind of like a huge cement mixer, and you just don't quite know what is going to get spat out by it. And it leads to a lot of tension through this episode, which I thought was really, really good. And indeed, with the job itself, it's done really, really well. I really like it where they're cutting between what's going on in the wrestling arena between Rowdy Rose Perkins and Mad Janet Murphy. That's all intercutting away. You've got them then, Gully drilling into the safe, and just the clock counting down. It's really nicely tense. And again, they really pick great, locations for these shoots. It really looks the part. I love the sense, of this heist that they're doing. For a TV show, an hour long, it really gets that sense of the heist really well, and then just how it really heads south pretty quickly when, unknown to them, because wrestling is fixed, which was, the big shock to Daveboy. It ends up where the two ladies in the arena, a few of the moves go awry, and it kind of escalates into being a bit of a real fight and a real wrestle rather than the well choreographed one that it would normally take. So it ends up finishing early.
I love the conversation you hear in the ring between the two of them kind of going, calm down your aggression, just stick with the moves. I think it's Mad Janet that says that to Rowdy Rose. And Rowdy Rose is like, no, you calm down. and they start battling in the ring like a real fight, effectively, which is why it ends 10 minutes early, I think. So it's quite a significant time difference for the guys. They thought it was going to be a 25-minute match and ended off being 15 minutes, Really, really cool idea here. And, it's just that amping up of the aggression between the two of them as things amp up outside, Gully thinking he's fully in control of everything. Even though, remember, Daveboy did point out that this was a possibility. Even though everybody else believed this is absolutely fixed. This is how long every fight lasts. I think, Alfie points out they want to sell their beer and pies, right? So they're not going to let anybody leave before all those pies are sold.
Exactly.
So that's quite interesting. But it's Banjo that kind of wrecks the whole situation. Banjo is one of the members of Gully's team. He's the one that Daveboy had that argument with back in episode 4, where they looked like they were going to come to blows, while Alfie and Gully were having their own little bit of tension as well. So
and he's the one that's baiting Daveboy at the meeting at Gully's house as well about it. Well, it's not going to finish early, this fight. And he goes, and Santa's not real either. Another revelation being dropped. But, this is really kind of good where you see him in panic and he ends off killing multiple civilians. The other great thing,
totally random. As well.
It was a little random.
Bullet to the head over and over again.
Yeah, it was a little random, but he panics and he shoots the bullet into the crowd that are rushing in a mad panic to leave the wrestling ring because they've heard the explosion down in the cash office. And so all of this is kind of coming to a head, really. One of the nice things about this episode as well is just, the opening is this crazy situation where you have a lady in red with an axe charging at someone in a mask holding a gun.
Yeah.
And actually from that opening, I didn't think it was Alfred.
Right.
I thought having seen that and seen then the heist unfold, I thought it was going to be Banjo.
Oh, really?
I just didn't recognize the voice of Alfred in that moment. But then you get to see that play out, you know?
Yeah.
It's really, it's just really good. The mad panic, as all the crowd are rushing, and, Gully, Alfred, and all the other people are all trying to get out. But yeah, in this panic, there's multiple killings, which then gets picked up by the press as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Fair dues to Johnny East as well. This really did feel like one of those 70s cop shows where there's a heist going on, or even a 60s, 70s movie. You know, it had that real feel about this situation. How are they going to get out of this? You know, I did think it was Alfred at the start being faced down by the wrestler. So it just felt like this is a great kick-off to the show. Oh, Alfie's in that situation. How's he going to get out of it later on in this episode, kind of thing? And the way he gets out of it is that Banjo goes around him and shoots her in the head. So he gets out of it by not actually doing anything. Alfred is not responsible here for the death. He's not a murderer, as Daveboy says to him later on. But his mom doesn't care about this. When she sees it in the newspaper, finds out that he's been involved, she's not willing to listen to any kind of explanation at all. You can see the disdain on her face that he's even brought home the money from the heist. The idea that he would bring this horrible thing down on their home. We've absolutely heard her many times say she's not going to America, but as you said earlier on, John, this pretty much confirms it. She even says, send Daveboy over for your clothes, knowing that she may never see her son again, knowing that her son is moving to another country. She's kicked him out and she's done with him now.
Yeah, this is pretty final, to be honest, to the point where Alfie can't even pick up his belongings. She said you can get Daveboy to come and collect them. And I mean, other than some kind of reconciliation attempt by Alfie with his mother, I guess this is probably early doors for this mother-son relationship.
Yeah, I suspect that he's going to try and get back into her good graces at some point later on in the season. But it is quite final from her point of view there. But then, as we mentioned in the synopsis, things still are quite complicated with Alfie. All the way throughout the episode, there's kind of a lot of people mentioning that Alfie's been out of sorts. Not only was his best friend Baza killed, but he's also out of sorts with everything else that's going on. He's completely out of control at the moment. He was getting more and more violent towards the end of the last season, and now he's not as in control as he was. We saw the scene early on in this episode, which was quite funny, where he's talking to Daveboy and telling Daveboy to make a decision, and Dave's looking at him going, after all these years together, you want me to make a decision?
I know.
In a like, you're lost, mate, kind of attitude that's in there. But Melanie is there. Gully's wife is there waiting for him when he's back in his club. He's sitting there. He's supposed to be out with Sandra when she's recording that beautiful piece of music that she is recording, that beautiful song, Love is a Losing Game, the Amy Winehouse cover that she's recording in the studio. Alfie promised that he'd be there. Instead, he's sitting there staring at his cash from the robbery and hooks up with Melanie, Gully's wife. So that's definitely going to come back to bite him.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you even hear Daveboy earlier in the episode saying, "You've still not told her," and Alfred getting really defensive about it. Well, we're not going, are we? At the moment, we've lost the 20,000.
Yeah.
So,
but not telling Sandra about
yeah,
leaving,
exactly. Yeah, and I think it is one of those things where, I mean, it really does paint Alfie in a bad light here, and I think this whole thing with Sandra singing the song is just so good. I think that, and the opening with Rowdy Rose Perkins is really two of my favorite parts of this episode. I think the whole montage to that song with the kind of betrayal of Alfred to with Sandra, really, with Gully's wife, and all the other relationship elements here between Gully and Melanie. You know, Mr. and Mrs. Troy are not in a good place, and then you have unbeknownst to Sandra, really, Alfie's not in a good place with her. Like, he doesn't tell her the truth, and you see all these relationships forming or splitting up. You know, you've got Katie and Bet sort of getting on with one another and sort of laying their issues or reservations to rest. You've got Martha and Thomas no longer together, separated, and Francis Gaunt and Lord Harwood separated as well in terms of that friendship. And just with this haunting music over the top of all this, it's really so well done. I really, really loved that. And the same with just on the Rowdy Rose Perkins, you know, because it's wrestling, it just feels like something out of the Gotham universe. Right. And that's what you thought. You had no context of that opening, and you just saw someone in a costume with an axe racing towards the person in the gun, Alfred. Yeah. And so it really had that feel of Gotham and a superhero comic property in that moment, which was really, really nicely done. So I loved I loved all of this, and I thought, in particular with Melanie and Alfie, you know, it felt very sad to see him doing that to Sandra. It was really powerful, very emotional.
But John, love is a losing game. Exactly as the song goes. One final bit that happens within these scenes as well, right at the end of the episode, is Gully executing Banjo in the woods. Again, feels like something right out of a gangster movie. Effectively, Gully taking Banjo out to the woods. Not 100% sure that Banjo knows that he's going to be executed, but pretty likely that he does. He knows that he has to pay the price for what happened here. And effectively what happened was he lost it. He killed civilians. He murdered one of the people on the marquee. Effectively, he murdered one of the wrestlers. And then when they weren't caught, he laughed about it and bragged about it almost. We got away, basically, is what he's saying to Gully. And Gully can't have that happen. So Banjo knows there's a price to pay here.
I mean, either he knows and he's going willingly, or as a soldier, he's not that great, given that he was allowing Gully to walk behind him in that way with a gun. So I guess he does know ultimately.
I think so.
But he certainly goes there quite willingly to his death.
Yeah. That's the end of the major story of Alfie, the boys, and the job. Let's get on to the English League and Thomas Wayne. Not a huge amount happening with the English League specifically, but remember, Martha is a member of the League, so everything that happens with her really in the episode is also connected to the English League, right? That's the way we're going to take it anyway for the as far as we can for the rest of the season. I think that's the way we're going to take it. Yes, John mentioned earlier on Thomas and Martha breaking up. Once again, I absolutely love the interaction between these two. I love Martha. She's such a strong character, and I love her reaction constantly when Thomas seems to try to protect her like a little precious egg. You know, he's had so many experiences with this woman from all the way through season 1, showing how strong she is, showing how much stronger she is than Thomas is, as this kind of privileged boy brought up with a silver spoon in his mouth.
Well, you look at it and you kind of understand where Bruce would get his fighting spirit from. It's certainly from Martha and not from Thomas.
Yeah, he got the money from Thomas and the chutzpah from Martha, I think. But I love the line between the two of them, you know, where he goes, "I'm worried about you. We're in a relationship. Aren't you worried about me?" And she goes, "No. I suspect you can take care of yourself, like I can take care of myself." And anyway, we're not in a relationship. We've had sex, 3 times? That means we've had sex 3 times. It's just a sex thing.
Yeah, it's not a relationship. Yeah, it's really good. And there's a lot of innuendo in this scene about being pumped for information as well.
There certainly is,
which Martha is concerned that is all Thomas is doing here, is pumping her for information about the English League, and maybe isn't really too concerned with their relationship, even though outwardly he is saying that, because he's very quick to hide the dictaphone and stop his recording about Alfie when she comes downstairs into the apartment. So you know, he's keeping things under wraps. Let's just say that he's not being open in that relationship.
True, but I definitely think she knows what's going on.
Oh, absolutely. She's a clever girl.
Fully aware. I also love that moment when Thomas catches himself when he's about to say, "Most women would kill themselves for a chance to be with me, or do whatever I wanted," kind of thing. Most women would what? Says Martha back to him, you know. Love those moments. And then when they have their final fight, Thomas walks away telling her to clean up her house, the slob, as he leaves. But it cuts back to that a little bit later on. You see Martha coming back home on her own, glass of whiskey in hand, sits down at her disgustingly dirty apartment, admittedly. Like, that is definitely someone that doesn't like to clean. But I love that she just wipes off the table with one arm, pushing everything onto the floor effectively. So she is pretty much a slop.
Yeah, absolutely. It's her house. It's her home. So
absolutely, she will need a butler to take care of
she
her
certainly
massive
will.
mansion when she moves in the future. And on the other side of that scene, when Martha's sitting at home, you have Thomas sitting in his office, working late once again, sitting alone, nowhere else to go, nothing else to do, and he spies the communique from Lucius Fox, who is kind of trapped within the Raven Union, right? He's been monitoring what's going on. He saw Project Stormcloud, filmed it, got a bit freaked out, used his amazing skills to try and get in contact with Thomas Wayne, sent a piece of paper with one line on it, and the piece of paper fell out of the machine and slid down behind a table. I was actually expecting that this wouldn't be resolved in the episode. I thought this was going to be something that, in 3 weeks' time, it would just be the skeleton of Lucius Fox was found up in the base of the Raven Union, because Thomas doesn't check his notifications when they come in.
Well, that's it. I mean, quite frankly, as a handler in the CIA for spies, Thomas was pretty, he's not very diligent, shall we say. Yeah. Firstly, he's sleeping on the job in his office when the communique comes in from Lucius Fox, and it gets cut off. The piece of paper where it's being printed off gets cut off and falls behind. And then when he actually sees it, he goes and picks it up. And I guess it's just because he thought it was a piece of blank paper. Yeah. But in that moment, he just puts it in a pile of other papers without looking at it. And I was like going, so you're not even going to read it. Lucius is going to be even more sort of isolated at the Raven Union headquarters. But luckily he does. And I was thinking, come on, Thomas, at least read the paper that you just picked up off the floor. Uh-huh. And he realizes that, he's left Lucius maybe in a sticky situation here at the Raven Union headquarters. But yeah, I was thinking, he's not a great handler for the CIA. He's not that diligent, really.
Not really.
But
I do wonder, is Lucius safe? I do wonder if it's been waiting too long. Should he have been able to organize something back? At least a day's gone by. I'd say at least it's gone from day to night between the times that Thomas could have picked up the information and sent in somebody to help him out or get him out somehow. So, I think Stormcloud may have freaked Lucius out quite a bit.
I think so. But on the other side of things, Martha is praised to the rafters by the new Prime Minister of the English League, Aziz, when she arranges the secret meeting with Francis Gaunt in London, where they're kind of just checking one another out. But basically, Francis comes with to open up discreet lines of communication, but she ultimately comes with a veiled threat as well, in that she asks or demands that the English League be surrender to them so that it will protect everyone from the devastating impact of the weapon that she doesn't mention. However, Aziz is fully aware of the Project Stormcloud, which was really, really interesting.
Is he aware of I believe he's aware of the name, and he's aware that it's a secret weapon. I don't know whether he does know exactly what it is, because I love that he deflects when asked. Francis Gaunt asks him, so what is it then? And he goes, no, you tell me what it is. I know everything about it, which is what everybody says when they don't have enough information. It is a really weird threat from Francis Gaunt as well. She does look appropriately terrified of the idea of Stormcloud being used, but it's a really weird threat, isn't it? You must surrender to us because we have this massive weapon that I really don't want to be used on anybody at all. So I don't want it used, but if you don't surrender to us, it will be used and then you'll all die, which I don't want to happen, basically.
Well, I think Francis has been the one who's been uneasy about Stormcloud all the time.
Yeah, of course.
She doesn't want to see chemical warfare taken up. But she's giving the reality that she sees that effectively the English League are surrounded. They're being bombarded. She says, we've got the army, the air force and the navy. Aziz to that says, you may have taken the towns. You may have all the armed forces, but you don't have the hearts and minds of England, and that as we're in London, and while we still hold London, then he is not just the Prime Minister of the English League, but of England.
Exactly,
So, he gives back as good as he gets from Francis Gaunt. And I think he's just playing, the game of cat and mouse with Francis to say, just lobbing Stormcloud in as a name. He sees that she has a reaction to that.
Yeah.
So, he's made the perfect play there. That's what it's about.
Exactly.
And it's interesting, she lets it slip that she's not here really as such for the Raven Union, but she's there for England. And I guess that's her uneasiness about Stormcloud. So again, this whole meeting is without the knowledge of Harwood. He doesn't know anything about this.
Absolutely. Kind of finishes our English League point, though, because it leads really well into our Raven Union point.
Yes.
And what's going on over there. Are we seeing the proper creation of another DC Comics villain in Harwood here? I really feel like how they've laid this out all the way from season 1. You saw him as a very powerful leader, and you see him lose his nose, and you see him go a little bit crazy. But I think this tension that's rising, where he's falling out of respect and feeling that he's been his trust has been broken by Francis Gaunt, and this attitude to her as he ratchets up taking more and more alcohol and more drugs. This feels like the kind of villain that you would see in a DC show. This feels like someone that's really starting to lose connection with reality in a way.
Yeah, there's something of a genesis here, or a creation story happening, and I think it's kind of interesting. Part of me is wondering about the medication.
Yeah.
Is that something that Salt is giving to him?
Ooh, yeah.
Is that where he's getting his medicine? In which case, maybe there's something around that medicine that is affecting him. But the other aspect to this is that, up till this episode, Salt has been trying to play that manipulating game between Gaunt and Harwood, trying to try to unsettle their relationship, kind of, squirm his way between them and disrupt that friendship and that alliance at the top of the Raven Union. And here, he is actually pretty knocked down by Harwood. I guess he feels he's got the full royal flush in the poker game when he comes to Harwood to say that she has met with Aziz secretly. Did you know anything about this? And Harwood just, he pretends that he did and that she will brief him, but he doesn't. And he really says to Salt, this is way above your pay grade. You just do technical scientific testing. Stop having ideas above your pay grade. Absolutely. Effectively.
Because it does feel like Salt is trying to put himself in there in the leadership team of this group.
So I don't know whether that means Salt is kind of really now kind of gone, in that sense. But the thing that to me kind of, there is Stormcloud still, but also because of this over-reliance on the medication, we've not really been told what that's for, whether it's to deal with the pain for the nose being taken off when he was being tortured in London. But, that's a lot of painkillers happening at this stage. Over a year since that happened, you would have thought it would have healed, but you just don't quite know what that medication is for. You see him staggering around the corridors. He's losing his temper. He's becoming much more prickly and sensitive about things. And of course, with Gaunt coming back, and you see him really just losing it with her to the point where then he gets her arrested and put into prison. And the thing is, though, these two characters, I kind of just really enjoyed it because you got the sense that they were friends and allies at the top. And even though Harwood was doing this, you could sense the bitterness about him having to do it to Francis, and her pleading. But in the end, he's got to do it because he's suspicious of everyone. He can't trust anyone. He's feeling betrayed. And even though they've been long friends, he can't verify what she's saying. So he thinks she's betrayed him. So into prison she goes.
Yeah, but you hear like Harwood saying he's known her his entire life.
Yeah.
You know, they're that close. They've known each other forever, and now he's willing to cut her off. Have to say, you know, you mentioned earlier on about that opening scene and the closing scene with the beautiful song from Sandra. They're two great scenes in the episode from an acting standpoint. This scene between Anna Chancellor and Jason Fleming in these two roles, and Francis Scott and Harwood, I think is my favourite scene in the episode. I love how the tension is going in the scene. I love that moment with Fleming going, you know, do you want me to dance? And he starts dancing and going, oh, not so bad for an old cripple, am I? You know, where he's really getting at her. And as you say, really playing on the fact that he's lost this best friend of his, the only person he could trust all the way throughout this. And then he tries to reach out to Bette, the only other person he could trust.
Yeah, at Peggy's sex shop, at the Sykes Pain Shop, in fact.
I love the name of the pain shop. I think it's great. It feels like it could be a pharmacy. But no.
And it's just that, you know, it's the matter of chance that who has come in looking for a truncheon that's more glossy, but George the Beefeater, who imprisoned Bette in season 1 and who forced himself upon her to rape her. And so she is getting her own back. Also to protect herself, because if they allow him to leave from the shop, then he will report that she's back in London.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you have the phone ringing while she's effectively clubbing him over the head with a revolver. And on the other end of that is Harwood, who ends up not getting in contact with Bette.
Yeah.
And so again, another emotional rug pulled, another relationship, another contact to give him certainty has gone. You know, it just compounds his feeling of isolation, of not being able to trust anyone close to him at Raven Union headquarters. Because Bette would ultimately tell him how it is, you know, give it to him straight, really, in terms of what he's feeling. That's what she's always done, and that's what he's relied on with his relationship and friendship with her. Yeah,
exactly. Great use in this period show. It's set in the 60s, so that's a period show, right? I know we're quite old. It doesn't feel like that much longer before we were born, but the use of the telephone throughout this scene, again, adding the tension. If you're going to be in the 60s, make sure a telephone's ringing the whole time in the background. It adds
absolutely.
to the tension. Good job there. But I suppose let's just talk quickly about Bette's scene and what's going on there. You mentioned what's happening with George, with Beefeater George. That's the person that she eventually was able to manipulate into posting the letters, which eventually got her out of the Tower of London. So they do have that connection as well. There was that kind of the power dynamic, I suppose, shifted between the two of them, from him being a guard, taking advantage of her, to her being able to manipulate him into eventually getting her out of prison. But Katie walks in on this and sees another real Bette Sykes. She constantly says, no, I'm grand. I'm not a bad person at all, to Katie, but she's seen over and over again the threats, the violence that Bette does. And once again, she sees this violence being beaten down on George here. And unfortunately, a bit of a slip of the tongue from Peggy where she reveals that Bette was in the Tower of London, waiting, hanging.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is really quite good, and it kind of really helps to sort of bring Katie Browning a bit more to the fore here.
Yeah.
You know, as you say, Bette has constantly been asking Katie to trust her, that she's a good person at every other stage of their journey from the detention center. Has been Katie seeing Bette killing people, clubbing people, beating people up, stealing things. So Katie's really now not sure whether she wants to hang around with Bette Sykes in that sense. And here she sees a guy in a seat being beaten over the head with a revolver. I guess that interrogation scene, the noises coming out of the shop, probably I don't know what passers-by would be thinking, given it is the Sykes Pain Supplies.
Product testing night, probably.
I guess so.
Inventory,
a new device had come in the post, I guess.
Yeah.
But this leads to Peggy Sykes, I guess, giving the backstory to Bet Sykes. Talk about a younger sister called Marianne, also known as May, and that she drowned, and it always was Bet Sykes was blamed for this. Peggy is adamant that it wasn't, but that she's carried around that guilt, this idea of always trying to do good, to make up for that, but always being followed by just bad luck.
It's almost cursed from that point onwards.
Cursed from that point onwards. Ultimately, it comes with Katie wanting to stay with Bet Sykes despite her history.
Yeah.
Bet, when Katie really is challenging her and when Peggy is telling her history, she runs out of the shop, but Katie goes to find her, and they share a nice intimate moment. And again, another scene with the beautiful song from Sandra, where it shows the two of them nestled together on a sofa.
Yeah.
So,
but only because Bet has committed that she will no longer be violent. She will no longer do any kind of physical pain to anybody, including George, which I love. That's kind of going, well, just after I take care of George, then I'll commit to it that I won't be violent anymore.
And she, as they walk back to the shop, she just says, we'll have to think of more creative ways, rather than just simply killing George. And I was there going, well, what are they going to do? What are they going to do? And I have to say, phenomenally good, as George becomes the latest window display at Sykes Pain Supplies. He's bald and gagged in his PVC, and he's screaming, strapped to the chair in the window display of Sykes Pain Supply. What a fantastic moment. Loved it. It made me giggle uncontrollably for hours.
I guess they were using Mr. Spicer's costume from last season.
Well, possibly. I certainly remember that Mr. Spicer died.
Yeah.
But I was half expecting to see Mr. Spicer's maybe dead body as a mannequin in the shop, and Mrs. Spicer walking around still in her dominatrix type way as part of the staff to help customers find their glossy truncheons, as George was looking for. So yeah, I really thought this absolutely hit the nail on the head for fun. Peggy Sykes and Bet Sykes and the Sykes Pain Supplies licensed sex shop.
Yes.
Absolutely great.
Nice touch that it was Alfie getting into his car, and that's how we see it in the background. So Alfie was right outside the new home of the Sykes and had no idea that he was that close to them again there.
Absolutely not.
So that's where we wrap it up on the major points from the episode and everything that's going on within the show, right? Where are we going, John, in this series? Alfie's still struggling to get out of the UK, still doesn't have enough money to get out of the UK, although all he needed was 15 grand, and now his mother's not coming, so maybe he only needs 10 grand now, so maybe he does have enough money to get out.
I guess so. And they must have gotten 20 grand to replace the 20 grand, so they should have 10 grand to spare, I reckon.
Maybe. You hope so. So I guess we're going to get a bit more of that next week, see what actually is happening. I guess if people keep dropping off the invited guest list to the US, like if something happens to Daveboy and he decides to go back to Scotland or something, we're left with just Alfie and lots of money trying to get over there. Something tells me that Alfie may, go over there without any money and end up working for the Waynes. I have this feeling that that's probably what's going to happen from, 70 years worth of history of comics, that he doesn't end up over there in a mansion of his own.
Well, I have to say that would really make the whole Alfred butler at the Wayne Manor almost give it a little dark twist that he's almost like an indentured servant.
Well, no, he's given a job by his only friend that he knows in Gotham. That's really not indentured servant. Tude. With the Raven Union and the English League, any idea what's going to happen between the two of those? Harwood now in full sole control after sticking Francis Gaunt into a prison.
Yeah,
I guess any kind of arrangement that was made between them and the English League is kind of null and void. Right?
I guess so. I still think that Salt is going to play a role here with Harwood. Maybe it's ultimately him trying to reach Harwood's position and take over the Raven Union. Maybe it's something along those lines.
Yep.
Maybe there is going to be an all-out attack on London by the Raven Union. The use of Stormcloud, or at least the tension and the threat of Stormcloud being used, ready for deployment. We've still got Lucius Fox there. Love to see him involved in that, trying to disable it.
Yeah, me too.
Certainly now that Thomas has seen that Lucius needs to get out ASAP, he needs to come back with this intel as to exactly what it does.
Yeah.
So I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, because remember the CIA are effectively supporting the Raven Union, but they have Lucius Fox in there getting the information. So potentially actually Lucius Fox is in there just for Thomas, not for the CIA. He's working on his own to get the information to Thomas so that Thomas can give it to the CIA so they'll change who they're supporting effectively.
And I feel Martha, as a wily spy herself, probably is pumping, unbeknownst to Thomas, him for information, getting the information. Maybe why Aziz knows about the name Stormcloud. But certainly, I guess whatever happens with the Raven Union, there will be the flip or mirror side of that with the English League.
Yeah.
I think the other big thing here is there's going to have to be something that plays out with Sandra and Alfie, Gully and Alfie, because of Melanie. And well, in both cases, it will be down to Melanie. But also there is the reconnection of Alfred with Martha and Thomas. I mean, it seems very transactional, their relationship here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Compared to the earlier episodes of season 1.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I think it'll be
even the first half of season 1 showed there was a very big gap between the three characters.
Yeah, but Alfred and Martha were much more tight, I felt, in season 1 to begin with, so I think that, there's an element of the story having to progress in that way as well. So, looking forward to seeing what comes up in the rest of this series.
Yeah, definitely. No major notes about the episode. Just want to call it again. The song "Love's a Losing Game" by Amy Winehouse. That's the second appearance of a cover version of an Amy Winehouse song in the show. We had "Back to Black" from episode 1 from the pilot. So I love the use of Amy Winehouse in the show. I think her type of songs, the songs that she used to write, really fit with this kind of melded period of the 60s and 50s and 20s and 70s all merged together. It feels like it's so appropriate to use her music in the show. I think it's really good.
Definitely. The only note from me was, again, just, the quality of the special effects. You get another great aerial shot of London continually being bombarded by the Raven Union. We've seen that before, like a really great shot, just like the lighting, the feel really helps, and just even other little moments where they put in a smoking chimney stack, behind just a normal street scene. It just adds so much. So it's just the notes for me really is just around the production of this show. Like I was saying, just the venue for the wrestling match it just felt right for Pennyworth. It was really good.
Good old Coza VFX doing their brilliant job they've been doing all the way back to Gotham as well. So great to see them back on board. I guess we have to have a little bit of our explanation corner for some of the Britishisms in the episode, John.
Absolutely, Governor.
We'll see what we can do here. There's one that's in there in a quick moment between Alfie and Sandra and her father. Sandra's trying to get Alfie to guess what the special news that she has, and Alfie guesses that her father's joined the circus because of his brand new suit. And he responds with "Pucker whistle this" as he's looking at this brand new suit. Pucker meaning great, whistle weirdly meaning suit. Don't know why, but he's effectively just saying it's a great suit. You could tell that from what he was saying, but pucker would be a very London type of term, right?
Yes, definitely. Yep. From Gully, he says, as the tension in the cash office with the wrestling match finishing, and there's the debate between them as to whether they should, dare I say it, blow the bloody doors off. He says, "Who dares wins," as he goes to blow the door off the safe.
Yep.
And that is the SAS motto.
That's right.
Who does wins from the special forces in the UK.
Yeah.
So yeah. And again, ties into their army background.
Absolutely. Also, well used in Only Fools and Horses. Who dares wins, Rudders, right?
Exactly.
Last one, which even John didn't actually recognise, from Harwood, when he's talking to Salt and telling him not above his station. He uses the phrase "matters of state beyond your ken" to Salt. Do you remember what that means, John?
I do now.
Yeah, I told him beforehand. It means knowledge. It means above your knowledge, above what you should what you should know. It's actually a Scottish phrase. I hear a lot of people saying, "Do you ken? Do you know?" Basically, would be how it's used in conversation in Scotland. So a lot of my Scottish friends would have said that pretty often, meaning that I don't know anything. Do you ken, Derek? Do you ken? That's it. That's our discussion about Pennyworth. Season 2, episode 5, The Bleeding Heart. It feels like all of the episode titles actually are kind of like names for the characters in the show. So still trying to work out who the bleeding heart of this episode is. Who is really the person that is caring for everybody more than they should, I suppose would be the term, the bleeding heart, right? Who's the one that cares for people more than they should? Is it Frances Gaunt because she cares for England more than everybody else and wants the bombing not to stop? Is it Sandra who cares more for Alfie than Alfie does for her? Is it Alfie because he's going to Melanie? I don't know, caring for her because once again, we do see that she's beaten by Gully here. You know, is that the caring heart that we have in here, the bleeding heart? Or is it the bleeding heart liberal, that is Martha? I don't know.
Who knows?
We should be trying to work this out. This is why we have a podcast.
I think you've
John.
worked it out pretty well. I will go with you 100%.
Okay, one of those 7 people.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Or it's all of them.
Okay. As we close out then, John, how would you rate this episode of Pennyworth?
I really like this episode. I would give it 3.5 polished truncheons out of 5. It's difficult.
I don't want to see where that half truncheons go.
No, exactly. I think, it's really good, writing and the direction and everything just to bring you back on board. And I think it's really difficult for a show because of having to close down production for COVID, then having to come back. And I guess they had to switch things up as to what they had to do in terms of the writing, the acting, the production and so on. So I think it's a real difficult situation where you've got your first 4, and you've had this break and now you're coming back to it. Mm-hmm. Maybe the break was always intended in some way. They did that a bit with Gotham. Yeah. But I don't think it was in this case. And so I think this was really good to sort of pull together everything that went on in the first 4 episodes, and to, I think, push that storyline forward between Sandra, Melanie, Troy, Gully, with getting to America. Having the whole bank heist in there was really nicely done. And as I say, I think there's some great moments, in this. I think the musical montage, was just phenomenal. You had some laugh out moments at, Sykes Pain Supplies, with George, being at the wrong end, I guess, of that, revolver, and Bet Sykes. You have the tensions all round between Gully, Sandra, Melanie, and Alfie, that square where they don't know yet. They don't know that this is going to be a problem moving forward with his mum as well.
Alfie and Melanie should absolutely know there's going to be a problem with Gully.
Oh, absolutely. No, Alfie does.
Yeah.
But Alfie is the one holding all the secrets. Yeah. He's the one compartmentalizing everything. He's the one that's been pretty awful to Sandra. Mm-hmm. So it's, there's nice little sort of tension there that is ready to explode. Seeing what happens with Harwood and seeing the split in his relationship with Gaunt, really, really good. And yeah, the wrestling cash office heist was just really, a great action sequence, really built nicely. So yeah, I definitely think this is a really good episode with 3.5 polished truncheons out of 5.
Absolutely agree with you. Really, really enjoyed this episode. Really enjoyed being back in the world of Pennyworth as well. We'll be back next week with episode 6 of season 2, The Rose and Thorn. Once again, we've just finished our coverage of WandaVision over on Disney Plus. You can check that out on our main feed on tvpodcastindustries.com, and we'll be following up with Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which begins on March 19th as well. But in the meantime, join us here on the Pennyworth podcast for all our discussions about Pennyworth, and make sure you send in your feedback about how you think these episodes are going as well. Email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com with any thoughts you have, or join us over in our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries.
Yes, and of course, you can subscribe to support the podcast over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or any podcast catcher of your choice. And you can also join us over on Patreon at patreon.com/TV Podcast Industries for $1.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Thanks so much. Talk to you again next time.
Yet, thanks so much, fellow Gothamites and governors, for joining us. It's, as always, a pleasure discussing Pennyworth with you. Speak to you soon.
Absolutely. By the end of the season, they might be Gothamites, or by the end of the show, they might be Gothamites again. I like it, John. I like it. Bye.
Bye.